Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. We are doing SQL injection number 12 on the Portswigger Academy Labs. We are going to look at how to do it. We're going to get a couple of things going in Burp, and then we're going to use Python to resolve the final part of the lab. If you don't know Python, that's fine. I'm going to take you through step by step how to do it and what things mean. So this lab is called Blind SQL Injection with Conditional Errors. This lab contains a blind SQL injection vulnerability. The application uses a tracking cookie for analytics and performs a SQL query containing the value of the submitted cookie. The results of the query are not returned, and the application does not respond differently based on whether the query returns any rows. If the SQL query causes an error, then the application returns a custom error message. The database contains a different table called users with a column called username and password. You need to exploit the blind SQL injection vulnerability to find the password of the administrator user. To solve the lab, log in as the administrator user. Cool. All of that seems fairly straightforward. So let's go. So I have got this open already in Burp, which is hiding from us. I just want to click on anything. Oh, click on intercept first. Click on anything and send this request to repeater. We know that the tracking cookie is the vulnerable cookie. So if we put the apostrophe in there, hopefully it breaks, which it does. We get an internal server error. What we need to do is determine how to extract information from this. So we need to find out how to extract information from this. We know that we need to get some information out of this. And we know that because it's a blind SQL injection, we can only rely on the error message or the status code, more to the point, the error status code. There's a few things that we can do. So similar to the last lab, we need to enumerate it character by character and figure out what the password is. So let's just see how many columns there are first. We'll do the order by technique. So we can do order by 1 and then comment out the rest. So that's fine. We got 1 column. Let's try 2. Okay, it seems like we've only got the 1 column to work with. And that's fine, because if we need to, we can figure a way around that. If we go and find our notes again, we scroll in here. So this query, by the looks of it, is going to be doing something like this. So select everything from, in fact, it won't be everything. Select tracker from analytics, where tracking ID is equal to, and then the tracking ID that we have. In fact, it will be single quotes, won't it? Because that's what breaks it. So that's what the SQL query will look like before we sort of do anything to it. And obviously this is our injection point here. We need to figure out a way of getting information back from it. Now, we don't know whether it's MySQL, we don't know whether it's Postgres, Oracle, or whatever yet, but we can figure that out. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out whether it's, or what database management system it is. So one way we can do that is we can do the union technique. So we can do union select 1. We can just do 1 for now. If it has to be a string, we can change it to a string. And not from. So we can comment that out and see what happens, right? So if we put this in here and take away that, we get an internal server error. Now let's change this to a string, because it might just be expecting a string. So we still get an internal server error. So that to me hints that it's a Oracle database, being that Oracle requires a from clause. So if we do from dual, so you can see there that it is an Oracle database because it is expecting the from dual. Most other databases will allow you just to do a union select without the from clause. So that's fine. So we figured that out. And now what we need to do, so DBMS is Oracle. We need to do something that will get the username and password out of the database. So like before, we're probably going to need a subquery. We're going to need a subquery to select the username and password from the, no, we don't need the username. We need a subquery to select the password from the users table where the username is administrator, but obviously we can't see what's being returned. So we need to make the query fail on certain cases. There's a construct in Oracle which allows you to do an if-else statement. It's not if-else. In this case, it's case when, and that will give us the ability to perform some logic within the query. And if, for example, the password length is greater than 1, we can make it return a 200, or we can make it return a 500 error, a HTTP status code. That will give us enough information that we can perform a sort of an extraction of the password. So we need to do a subquery, and to do that, we can concatenate the 2 strings, okay? So again, this is our injection point, and we will do concatenation, and then we'll do a subquery, and then we'll concatenate back to the original query. And then in here, we want to do something that will check the password length. We can do select, I think this is a syntax case when the length of the password is greater than 0 or greater than 1. We'll do 1. Then something. Now we need to make the query return something that's not going to work. We need to return that 500 error. We can differentiate between whether it's a 200 or 500, so whether it's true or false. So we are going to use the 2-character function with a 1 and a 0, which will return false. Else we're going to return a string, which is expecting, and then we end that sort of if statement. And then we want to do from where the username is equal to administrator. So this entire query now we should be able to use this. I need that extra quote. We should be able to use this to determine that the password is longer than 1 character, which is. I mean, so far every password has been 20 characters, so I imagine it's going to be 20 characters. But that's not the process, is it? You know, we have to do it manually. So we got, okay, I just noticed something here that I'm missing a bracket. So actually, if we go back to our notes over here, you see that this opening bracket for the subquery never actually gets closed. So what we need to do is add a bracket over here to close the subquery. And I think that's good to go then. So if we copy this back over to here, we get a 500 internal error. And if we do greater than 200, we get a 200. Okay. So what's happening here, like I was saying, is when this condition is met, then this happens. And when it's not met, so on the negative side of that, you get the else, which in this case returns a string, which we know is what the query wants. We now need to work out how to utilize this to actually get the password back. So what we can do is similar to what we've done here, and let me do this in the notepad again. I'm going to write this in Python so we can do it all at once, but I just want to show you how we're going to do both steps of this. We've got the length of the password, and now we just need to find out what the password is. So we need to, in fact, I'll just copy and paste this quickly. What we have here is this subselect, and we're going to use the same thing, but what we want to do is do a substring on this. So select case where when substring of password and the first character of the password, and we could do equal to A, then the same thing happens. So all the rest is the same. It's just this bit here. So when we get the password of A, it's going to throw a 500 error. So let's just run this and we'll see what we get. Okay, we get a 200 okay. So if we change this to B quickly, then we get a 200 okay. So what's happening here is this criteria isn't being met. So we're not getting this 500 error, we're getting a 200 okay. So this is sort of, the logic on this is flipped now. So the error message, the positive error message that we want is a 500 error, 500 HTTP code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write this in Python, and we will just loop over, we'll create a loop, we'll discover how many things are in how many characters are in the password, and then we'll print the password out. So let's load up a notepad. I think I've got code on here. Yeah. Let's create a new file, and we'll zoom in, and we're going to write this in Python. So import requests, and let me just change this to Python quickly. And we create a main function, and that can just return nothing from it. And we want to do if name is equal to main, and we run main. And that's just sort of boilerplate code for Python. What it does is when the script's called, it will check to see where the entry point is, and it will call that function. So let's start by defining a function that will get the length of the password. And we can define some parameters here, like start and end, which will be the start and the end of the loop. So we could do from like 1 to 100, or we can do 1 to 20, or whatever we want to do. So we can do for, let's do L for length in range start to end. And then in this loop, we want to create a new request for every iteration of this, so we can check to see whether the length that we're giving the request, or the cookie in this case, is causing a 200 error or a 500 error, a 200 okay, sorry, or a 500 error. So let's do this. Let's create the cookie. And the cookie is tracking ID, I believe. And then we can just copy the request out of here. So this is the bit that we want. So we want this entire thing here. Actually, let's put this in double quotes. Not that we need to do the key in double quotes, but we'll do it all in double quotes, and I will just quickly toggle word wrap. Oh, toggle word wrap. So you can see everything. And what we're going to do here, so this is the sort of tracking ID cookie that we had before, and we just want to do something like, and we're going to do the exact length, because there's no point in doing like greater than, that doesn't make any sense for this. We can do the exact length. So we want to close that, and we want to add in a string, because you can't add an integer to a string in Python, so you have to convert the integer to a string. And we want to change that to L. So what this is going to do is loop over the range, the list of numbers between start and end, the ones that we give it, and it will check to see whether this, it might be easier to show you. I'm not sure whether I'm explaining it very well. But let's grab our URL quickly, which is this one. Oh, tracking quotes. And we just want to add our cookies equals cookie. And then we want to check if the status code is 200, because in this case, that was the status code that we wanted. Then we can return the length. And I think that should work. So let's go down into our main function, and we can just print something like length of password is, oh, and then we want to what do we call it? Get length, was it? I think it's get length. Yeah. Because that will return the password length, and now we want to enumerate the password. So we can do another line here saying password is, that's fine, because we're going to return it anyway. So, and we'll just call this like get password or something. Get password. Right. So let's define that function. Oops, right here. Define, what was it called? Get password. And in here, again, we're going to sort of make this as generic as possible, so you might be able to use it in other challenges just by replacing a couple of things. But in here, we want to do a character set of, say, A, B, C. In fact, I've got a list of them here. Basically A, B, C, all the way up to 9, so 8 to 9, basically. And the length is something that we're going to pass in, but we'll default to 20. And then we're going to want to return password. So let's define password here is equal to nothing. So we need to check every character is, we need to check whether every character in the password is A, B, C, etc. So what we need to do is create two loops, one that loops over the length and one that loops over the character set. So let's do the length first. Let's do for L in range. We'll do 1 to length. Do we call it length? I can't remember what we called it. Oh, it's here. Yes, it's length. And we also want to create the next loop, which is for the character in the char set. Now in Python, you can loop over a string and it will just go into each individual character, which is great for this because that's exactly what we need. So let's go back up here and create our, in fact, let's not do that. Let's create our cookie again. And we can go straight into here and grab this. So that's the cookie that we want. So that was tracking ID with the value of that. So in here, this is where the B character was. We need to change this for character, or char in our case, sorry. So just make sure it's a string, which we know it is, but it's fine. We can still convert it. And we want to change this to be the length, the L, sorry, L. So then on every loop, it's going to check this and this. And if they match, then we'll get something back. So then we just need to build the request again. So r is equal to requests.get, and the same URL is here. My mouse is being funny. This URL here. So chuck that into there. And cookies is equal to cookie. Then we need to just return or check whether the status code is a 500. So if r.status code is equal to 500. I mean, you could be more specific and just do like not equals to 200, or sorry, less specific multiple point. You can be less specific and say is not equal to 200. But for this, we know that the request code, or sorry, the status code is 500, so there's no point in doing this. But let's edit the password. So we want to append the character to the password, and we can print something like bound char plus character. Was it char we said? Yeah. And if we do find it, then we want to break out of this loop. So because we're looping over the length, as soon as we find the character password in this loop, we want to break out and start back from here. Otherwise, it's going to take forever. You'll have to do a lot of requests. And I think that's it. So if I save this, documents, and we'll just save this as SQL I, and make a folder called lab 12. And this could be solution.py. And we'll go to our terminal and go into documents, SQL I lab 12, and we will run the solution. Okay, get length is missing start. Okay, so get length. Oh yeah, that's right. So we want to start from 1, and we'll do like 25. We'll go to 25 because I believe it's 20. Every other password's been 20 so far, but we'll try. Try 25. It might be more. Oh, I don't know where that's gone. So let's run this again. That is not the case. Okay, I've actually made a mistake here. So I think I need to check whether this is 500, right? Because if the password length, oh God, why is it not? Why'd that turn off? The password length is equal to this, then it needs to be it will return a 500 error. Otherwise it's going to return 200, isn't it? So let's run this and we'll see what we get from it. Okay, so yeah, the password length was 20, like I thought it would be. And now we're enumerating the password. Just to make sure in here, have I got the final password being printed? Yes, because this is going to return the password and that's going to print it. Okay, cool. So now it's just a case of waiting. Actually, to make this a bit more robust, what we can do is do length. Let's do password length is equal to length, and then we can change this to be password length. And in here, we want to do length is equal to password length. So I'll let this finish because it's still going to work. It's just we hard-coded the parameter as 20, but really we should be passing in the length of the password that we found. So there's the password. So that'll be the password of the administrator account. But if we run this again, it should work just as well, but with, say, length of password, and it's going to do the same thing. But that's the way we should have done it. So let's go back over to our Chromium browser, look on my account. We know that the administrator is the username and the password is the one that we got. It is not. So the error that I made here was that range only goes up to that character, up to that length. So we need to do length plus 1, which then should work. If I go back into here and we rerun this, we should get a different password. I imagine there was only 19 characters of that last password. I mean, I could just fetch the last character, but for argument's sake, we might as well just let it run. Right, as you see here, we've got the password here. So let's go back over to our Chromium browser and type in here. There we go. So the problem was that we had the range going only up to that number, not including that number. That's just sort of a Python thing. Python's not actually a very good language for me. I'm pretty bad at Python, but yeah. Anyway, there's the lab done. Hopefully you learned something. If you did, drop me a like, follow the channel, and have an awesome day. Cheers, everyone.